reminder for those who don't know, we're not just a podcast. We are a medical device recruiting firm, and we fill positions nationally. There's not one state I know of where we have not made placements. Visit ChaseMedSearch.com to find our latest position listings. You can also find me, Jordan Chase, on LinkedIn, and I post up-to-date position listings there. I'm capped at 30,000 LinkedIn connections, so you can follow me on LinkedIn, but unfortunately, I can't accept your invitation if you send me one. Finally, if you've got feedback on our podcast, please email it to me at jordan@chasemedsearch.com. I love suggestions for topics for the show. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe on YouTube. It does help grow the show. Welcome back to the Chase MedSearch Podcast. I'm delighted to have my guest on, Joey Eloms, a good friend of mine for many years. Joey recently wrapped up his professional journey with Medtronic as Director of Surgical Strategic Accounts. And prior to that, Joey was a top district sales manager, former representative in the InterStim business at Medtronic. Before that, he was at Bard Medical and in pharmaceutical sales. Going all the way back, Joey was in the NFL as a defensive back for the Seattle Seahawks, Pittsburgh Steelers, and a season with the New York, New Jersey Hitmen in the XFL. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in his high school, Concordia Lutheran in Fort Wayne as well. I watched that speech today. It's part of my never-ending research on Joey. Joey resides in Indianapolis with his family. Great to have you on. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Is it possible you can recant what you just said every morning when I wake up as an affirmation for me to?
You get the recording in the digital file. You can listen to it every day while you look in the mirror. How about that?
Man, I will absolutely do
that. You really did all that, Joey. You really did. It's great stuff, man. Where'd you grow up? You grew up in Indiana, right? Fort Wayne?
I grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, about an hour and a half north of Indianapolis.
Great town. Yeah. When did you know you were a special athlete?
Thank you for using that word. The giggle there is just because I never really thought of myself as a special athlete. I did see a gap between kind of like myself and some of the other kids I was playing with around the 7th or 8th grade when we were playing football. At that age, you don't really have an offensive line. So the team who has the fastest player with the ball in his hands normally wins. So they would just toss me the ball. I would run left. And if there was nothing there, I was fast enough to reverse field, run right. And that's kind of when I knew there was a difference in how I was able to, play the game versus some of my peer group. But it was funny because my coach actually would come to me in about the third quarter and say, "Hey, can you stop doing that? We don't want to make the other team feel bad." So, it was the first time I was asked to put a governor on when I did well for the sake of others, but it wasn't the last time. A little foreshadowing there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, now you played in college. You played for IU, I think. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's correct.
And you went undrafted, right? Yeah. But you still didn't quit. Tell us about that. That's some adversity to overcome, I think, for a lot of athletes, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you put it in perspective. It is sports, right? It's not life or death. It's absolutely sports. It's entertainment for some. It's a way of life for others. Yeah. But the disappointment that you as an athlete feels when you feel like you are good enough to hear your name called and then it doesn't happen. Again, from the outside looking in, people will say it's just sports. It's no big deal. You still went on to live a pretty decent life, and they're accurate to a large degree. But just like anything else, when you pour your heart and soul into something and you have an expected outcome and that outcome doesn't materialize, it is still disappointing. And then there's two things you can do from that, right? You can let it fuel you, or you can, help have it be a part of why you fail. And I let it fuel me. It's just one of those things where I just wanted to prove everybody who decided not to draft me or give me a shot, I wanted to prove you all wrong. And I learned a lot through that process. I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about how to navigate adversity. And it's one of those cool things where that followed me through my professional career as well, not just on the football field, but in the corporate world. And I made the mistake, and I'll stop talking after this because I'm just really passionate.
This is great. Yeah.
I made the mistake early on in my career of trying to distance myself from my athletic background. Right, I wanted to be judged based upon my merits in the given arena that I was in. Not, hey, tell me some stories about Warren Moon or John Kitna or Joey Galloway or whomever else I might have played against. I
Hmm.
wanted to be judged based upon my ability to complete the tasks associated with a certain role. But then I had a mentor tap me on the shoulder. I say tap me on the shoulder. He actually kind of slapped me in the forehead, said, "Hey, you're doing yourself a disservice if you continue to run away from your time in professional sports. There's so much that has helped to shape you and how you view the world that's made you successful that you need to lean
Hmm.
into." And so that was a sentinel event, me not getting drafted. That
Hmm.
helped me really understand how to navigate adversity and kind of figure out what I was made of. And then down the line, the second sentinel event was somebody actually helping me understand that I should lean into that athletic
Yeah.
background because it helped shape me as a professional.
That's fantastic advice, and I'm glad somebody stepped in and told you that because at a human level, you've accomplished things other people just haven't. And it's a great conversation starter. It's great. It's part of who made you what you are today,
Yeah,
right? I mean, I'm sure there's things you learned. You played overseas a little bit too, right? For the Scottish Claymores, I think.
that's
Is
correct.
that right? What's that like? What's it like playing some international football versus American style?
You realize three things. Number one, football is big in America. It wasn't at the time. It wasn't as big in Scotland. It was all about soccer. We were like secondary citizens, and they call it the real football. By the way, we what we play
Hmm.
is American football. Number one. Number two, I learned I did not like haggis, no matter how much HP
Oh,
sauce you put on it. It's just not for me.
can't imagine.
But number three, that was um, that was another sentinel event for me, and that was more of a social awakening, right? Or a personal awakening that the world was so much bigger than the three states that I had visited or been in at the time. And it's why now, yeah, I don't know how much research you got a chance to do, but we travel internationally a couple times every year,
Nice.
just because it really wet my whistle for understanding how other cultures, move about this thing we call
Mhm.
life, how they approach things, how they interact with folks who don't look and or sound like them.
Mhm.
And there's so much to be learned when you get a chance to travel abroad. And those are the three biggest takeaways from that time in Scotland. And it was another situation where I felt like and this is me between my ears. I mean, it's part of the position I played and part of who I am. I felt like I was good enough to not have to go over there and pay my dues. But again, I had a mom who said, "Hey, that's how you see you. Make sure they can see you how you see you. So go over there and play your butt off." And I played my butt off, and I got a chance to come back and make the team for three more years actually.
That's fantastic. When did you know it was that journey in professional sports had kind of reached the end for you? How did you
Yeah.
know it was time to focus on other things professionally?
So that is, and if we're being transparent here, or if I'm being transparent, that is one of my biggest regrets, Jordan.
Mm,
I think I tapped out too soon,
mm,
right? I had a couple, three things not go the way that I thought they should go. Number one, I didn't get drafted. Number two, I had to go over and play in Scotland. And then number three, when I came back, I was asked to still get some additional reps outside of the NFL, which is why I played in the XFL, right? And then after the XFL, had a great season. It's funny you asked the question because that very last game was a game against the Birmingham Thunderbolts, I think it was. I had two interceptions. I think I broke up an additional pass. One of the interceptions I actually pitched back to my teammates and he scored. It was like the game of my life. Like everything slowed down. I could see everything. I knew
yeah.
exactly what was going to happen before it happened. Had the game of my life. But I was sitting in the locker room and I just became awash with this kind of sadness. I'm like, what are you sad about? You just put some great film out there. And to your point, I kind of knew that was going to be the last hurrah.
Mm,
Uh,
mm,
and so this was in the spring, the coming fall and the NFL season started. I made it into camp again. They actually drafted a couple of corners, so I was the odd man out. But I I knew that back in the spring when I finished that last game in the XFL.
mhm,
And there was a feeling that I felt, and this is one of those things where as you mature, um, feel is not always real, right? So
mhm.
I felt that, but the reality is I still had a chance to pursue my dream. I just would have had to have taken a different route and maybe go to the CFL for a little bit.
Mhm.
Had opportunities to do that. I just decided, well, it's time to get on with my life, and therein lies the regret. Life was going to happen when it was time for it to happen, no matter when I started. There was still a window for me to chase my dream, and I did not for a little bit longer because I thought that I had been given enough sign that this is over with.
Mm.
But to this day, that's one of the biggest regrets that I have.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you know, I tell my kids, regret is a powerful teacher too. It's all about in life, the experiences you have, the good and the bad, they help shape you who you are today. You made a pivot and, regardless of whether you're playing professional sports or not, you've had quite an exciting career. What was it about healthcare? Why did you make the pivot to that versus anything else you could have done? Everybody wants, former professional athletes on their side, in sales or wherever. What was it about healthcare that drew you that way?
So this is an interesting story. It's a really quick one though. I broke my leg in college, my junior year in college, and I have a plate and 6 screws in my lower left leg still to this day from that injury. As I was coming to, the doctor was in the room speaking to someone who wasn't a nurse or an anesthesiologist, physician's assistant. He was speaking to the striker rep, and they were talking about the actual hardware I have in my leg and how it looks on X-ray, and the X-rays were up in the room, and I just kind of ear hustled for a little bit, and I heard not a doctor having a conversation with somebody that who was just less trained and that they looked down upon. He was almost talking to him as a peer in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that what his work as a physician, as if, it was complete if it was done the right way. And he was looking for some affirmation from this guy who didn't have an MD. And so after the doctor left the room, I got a chance to talk to the guy a little bit. His name was John. I can't remember his last name. So we chatted for a bit, and he said, "Hey, man, I know you have another year of eligibility here in college. If you go on to play it thereafter, make sure you look me up when it's time to take a look at what your next chapter is going to be like."
Okay.
And I did. I hit him up, and he gave me some advice that started me along the path in pharmaceuticals, and then helped me get into specialty pharma, and then from there to device.
Mm-hmm.
And I owe him quite the measure of gratitude, but I can't rember his last name. Again, I play football, concussions. So, no,
He's out there in the
kinda,
universe somewhere,
he's out there. Well, if you're hearing me right now, John, I really appreciate it, brother. My kids appreciate it, and so does my wife as well. That's how it was, man. Literally, and I'm a believer, and I absolutely let my faith govern my decisions. And I don't believe anything happens by consequence or for no reason. There was a reason I was coming to when I did, and I got a chance to hear that conversation, and we had the conversation that we had, John and myself. So it was all divine intervention, man. And it's just, it's wonderful sometimes when you sit back and look or play the tape again, and you see where God has placed people and yourself in certain areas here to produce where we are right now.
That's wonderful. So much there, but I'm thinking about the transition from professional sports to now selling in pharmaceutical sales, and how I would have found that to be a very disorienting experience because, I never achieved anything in sports, but I worked my way entirely through college as a waiter, as a bellman, parking cars, shining shoes, you name it. I worked for tips. I worked at business hotels, right? So
Right.
when I finally got to Medtronic into human resources, that first professional job, if you will, I had no idea what was going on. I felt like an imposter. I'm like, I'll play the game as much as I can, but I've never worked in this environment before. I do not know what's going on. What was that like for you as an athlete, a professional athlete, to go into a sales role in pharmaceutical sales? What was that? Was that disorienting, or did you just take to it like a duck to water?
No, it was disorienting in the beginning. I think the biggest adjustment was like, wait, there's no training camp? Like every fall of my life for, 15 years, there was training camp. There was this period of just arduous and really difficult physical activity that, led to an expected end in terms of your preparation for the coming season. But, within pharma, there was going to sales training. And I'm like, well, we don't have to do any sprints if we get something wrong. You just kind of get a chance to do it over again. I don't pay a fine for showing up late to a meeting. I mean, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But all jokes aside, the biggest thing was as a competitive person, you have to learn how to allow that to come out of you in an appropriate fashion, as it pertains to what your surroundings are. So being a competitor on a football field shows up much differently than being a competitor in the classroom with a peer group trying to learn a certain product and, a sales model. So I had to kind of rechannel. That was the most disorienting part of it. There was no physical manifestation of my competitive nature. There was no ability for me to take someone else's will physically to show that, I'm more prepared and I'm physically better than you. This was something that had to be done on a more cerebral level. So that was a huge shift, right?
Mm.
Being able to, have a physical manifestation of any bit of frustration, anger, and or superiority, if you will, to your peer or your competitor. You have to shift that a little bit because maybe there could have been a fight or two here or there outside the OR if it's in my
Mhm.
case and you thought it was your case. But no, most of the time it was just handling things between your ears, and so that
Mhm.
was a period of growth and maturation that I absolutely needed at the moment at that time, and it served me well moving forward because then I learned how to channel that same aggression, that same competitive fire in a more appropriate fashion. And I'd like to be able to say that I've produced results over the past 20 some odd years that would
Mhm.
suggest that I figured it out successfully.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you got in and began a pretty rapid climb because you're in pharma for a little bit, then you're in specialty pharma. Tell us about that transition. I mean, not everybody gets to sell in specialty pharma. I mean, that's an elevation of a position. How did that happen? How did that come about?
Again, God bless John. I wish I knew his last name, but as a part of the advice he
We got
gave
to
me,
find him. To the
I
audience,
got to
we got
find
to.
John. Yeah,
His
I mean,
name
I'm
is
sure he's
John
long
Dorsey.
since retired. He built a roadmap for me, and that roadmap started with a pharma job, learning how to speak a little bit of the language. Right, obviously,
Mhm.
pharma and devices are worlds apart, depending upon what you're doing. But it gave me an entree into how to speak the language around, medicine and engage physicians. Right, and he said a couple of things. Number one, don't let anyone outwork you, which is, again, that's easy. I can do that. Number two, he said, don't stay too long. And
Mm.
at the time, there was this, yeah, and I don't know if it still exists because I've been removed for a little bit, but there was this stigma, of pharma reps working from 10 to 4 or 10 to 2, as a matter of fact, 3 days a week at the time. And he said, because of that, get what you need out of it. Don't stay too long,
Mhm.
and move towards specialty before you make the leap from primary care pharma to device. And so what you see on my resume was just a part of me following the playbook that we put together in that, well, not in the OR, but shortly after I finished playing football. And so that jump from pharma to specialty required me to be open to leaving a big company like Aventis at the time to
Mhm.
going to a smaller startup like Ossiant Pharmaceuticals,
Mhm.
in order to get the requisite experience at the hospital level to get me to where I wanted to be with my ultimate goal, which is in devices.
Yeah. Yeah.
The biggest
Fantastic.
difference in the transition, um, number one was call points, and number two was intensity. Right, it did
Mhm.
ratchet up the intensity a little bit based upon the gravity of each conversation with the physicians and the hospital staff that you were engaging with. Right, it's not just grabbing a signature, asking how things are going, dropping off samples, and maybe delivering a 2-second blurb. No, it's much more structured in the conversation, longer periods of time that you have with your ultimate customers. And so there was a different level of preparation necessary and a different level of being able to uh, dig in with your customers to create um, a value proposition that made sense to them. So it was a welcome leap, but it
Yeah.
was difficult. It was not easy at all.
What was Ossian's product? What did you jump from and jump into?
Essentially, a respiratory fluoroquinolone. Right, it was an antibiotic, a really strong antibiotic. So I moved from diabetes,
Mhm.
insulin, and sulfonylureas and things of that sort to essentially infectious disease.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And you weren't, again, there terribly long before medical devices came along. Tell us about how you got that job, how you heard about it, who hired you. I might know who they are. I don't know. Um, you know, how did it all happen? Because, pharmaceutical reps over the years have really had to stand on the outside looking in when it comes to
Mhm.
medical device and sometimes not been able to break through if that's what they wanted to do because of the stigma with pharma and medical device and all that stuff. So, how did it happen for you?
Met a guy on the golf course.
Mhm.
God, I can't remember his name either. But he was friends with the guy who hired me. The guy who hired me was Mark Aldinger.
Okay.
He was out of Dublin, Ohio.
Okay.
Um, and I never forget. I had 3 interviews with Mark, and the first interview was a formal interview. The second 2 interviews was, and this was his style. And I'm mentioning this because it helped shape me as a leader in my interview style as well. We talked more about me and how I saw the world than
Mhm.
the actual function of the job. And so it was interesting because after the end of the interview, and I still say this to this day, and I give Mark all the credit in the world for it. When I do interview someone, when I was in people leadership, I would tell them, look, we're going to try to fill two buckets here through our conversations. I don't know how many we're going to have, but we're going to work to fill two buckets, a fit bucket and a function bucket, right? And I mentioned those in the order of importance because to me, as I see it, your resume gives me an idea as to whether or not you can complete the functions of the role. And we'll dig into that when appropriate. But we're going to spend a lot of time making sure that you're the right fit on the team, you're the right fit in our region, you're the right fit for our broader organization as well. And that's what he was doing at the time. I thought this guy's just cool as heck. We're just having a conversation about this and that. But no, he was digging into how I connected dots, how I saw the world, and was able to extrapolate that into, okay, this kid might have what it takes to succeed in medical devices. It was the coolest thing ever. No star formatted questions after that first interview, none of that stuff.
Yeah.
So it helped me shape. It helped shape me as a leader that I was, when I was in public health.
Yeah, that's so great, and that we're all over the board with the questions I had prepared, which is actually terrific. But I want to talk about how you think about hiring people. You said you talked about fit. You have a fit bucket and a function bucket. For those people that aspire to get to interview with you for a job or something like that, let's talk about what are the intangibles you're looking for? What are you looking for on a resume? Take us through. You've hired so many people now and had just absolutely stellar successes. We were talking about somebody that you coached at President's Club not too long ago. Tell me about your hiring profile and walk us through that a little more deeply.
So the resume is like we always say, it's table stakes, right? It gets you into the door. You see, some accomplishment there. You see maybe some experience in the disease state that you're working in or the device arena that you're playing in that you can draw some parallels to. You see those things as table stakes. Then you also, for me, I'd like to see some progression. In one of the first conversations that we have about the resume, which may not happen until the second or third conversation, but what I would ask is, do me a favor of walking me through your resume from back to front, and I want to understand three things, right? By the time that you're done with this, I want to understand, number one, why you made each move that you made, right? The recruiter can come knocking every now and again, but I need to know a little bit more in terms of why you decided to make the step that you or take the step that you took. If it was financially motivated, if it was created more opportunity for you to elevate your career, if it was a situation where you were selling a product that you thought couldn't miss, help me understand why you made each move that you made. Number two, help me understand at any given stop which accomplishment you're most proud of, right? What are you extremely proud that you accomplished at each step? That shows me some sort of growth. That shows me what you value, right? If you are really proud of the fact that you won President's Club, then okay, that's great. Maybe you value your love language is recognition. Hey, I helped 3 people get promoted or trained 4 people. Okay, well then, you have a more altruistic viewpoint and you are willing to partner and collaborate with your teammates. There's so much to be gained from someone sharing with you what they're most proud of in terms of who they are. Then the last thing is, what foundational skill set or foundational level of skill, what foundational skill, did you gather at each one of your stops? Like you're here now, you were there back then. Help me fill in the gaps in terms of how did you build the foundation that you now stand on? And the funny thing is, 2 things normally happen. Number one, their eyes get as big as dinner plates because they're trying to think of answers to those. And then number 2 is the people who take a moment and think about it a second before they answer, they end up telling me almost everything I need to know in that one conversation about how they'll fit on the team. Because you can't tell me that you're going to be great at delivering information about something you know nothing about right now if you can't help me understand you efficiently. Right? Because you have all the answers to those questions because you lived all that stuff. And if you can't do that efficiently, I'm going to have a hard time, connecting that to your ability to do well with information that you don't currently have. And then number 2, if you don't understand your blind spots in your areas of opportunity, it lets me know that you may not be as coachable as you need to be in order to be a part of a team that I'm, a leader on, right? Because in doing all this, I deliver my resume to them. I'll do the same thing with my resume that I asked them to do, and share, my foundational skills that acquired at each stop, what I'm most proud of at each stop, and why I made each move. I'm not going to ask you to do something I'm not willing to do or I can't do as well. So that's kind of an entree into how I look at the hiring process, the interview process. The star formatted questions are great. I'm not poo-pooing them at all, but it doesn't give me what I need to know in terms of, again, filling that most important bucket for me, which is fit.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's really, it reminds me, actually, we skipped a step because you were at Bard before you came to Medtronic, I think, right? You went from Oscient and you went to Bard. Bard has a notoriously lengthy interview process. I've talked to people that have done 9 interviews, 11 interviews, 13 interviews, and gone through months of, waiting to hear. I will say Bard gets a really good outcome in my experience for that process. Like the people that they have that I've encountered are really, really good. What was that like interviewing with them? Was it something similar? Was it lengthy or was it much shorter?
No, 6 interviews, man. 6 interviews.
Yep.
Yeah. It was some peer interviews, some of Mark's peers, a guy by the name of Jason Greer. I never forget him either. And then interviews with Mark and Mark's boss, Joe DeJean, out in Scottsdale. It was a pretty arduous process, man. But I think part of that was a couple of things from what Mark said. Number one, to see if your answers were consistent, if you were making things up. And number two, just to see how you responded to the pressure, right?
Yeah.
And it was some, luckily, prayerfully, thankfully, I was able to show up well in both regards because I wasn't telling any untruths. And again, not poo-pooing the pressure of a long interview process, but having been just 3 or 4 years removed from playing in the NFL, I mean,
it's a little different.
It's a little different, right? You use the same word to describe the scenario, pressure, but it was just a little different. And I'm like, man, if this is pressure, I'm going to love corporate America.
I love it. Hi, everyone. I wanted to take a minute to talk to you about an exciting new resource that I've discovered for new college grads and for healthcare professionals that want to break into pharmaceutical sales. upharmasales.com. That's the letter U for UPharma. For years, I've thought there's a gap that exists between new college grads that want to break into healthcare sales right away and the ability to do it. But upharmasales.com fills in that gap. At UPharmaSales, you'll find insider tips on landing your first role, nailing the interview, and building confidence for this field, all from experienced reps who've been in your shoes. Ryan Canseso built the website, and he outlines the very steps he took to break into pharma sales. Pharma sales is competitive, but you don't have to figure it out alone. Set yourself apart. Go to upharmasales.com and start your journey the right way. For a discount on the online learning program, use the code Chase MedSearch. Now go get after it. You made a jump to InterStim though, and you got in. And what was that like? Because you'd had a taste of pharma, you sold medical devices at that point, and now you moved into neuromodulation at InterStim. I always like to talk to neuromod people and say, when you first got this job, what did you notice was different about this and doing this job than any job you'd had before? Because I know there are nuances that people don't, in our audience that are not in neuromod don't necessarily understand or appreciate. Tell us about that.
Well, before we jump into that, there was a brief stop. My first job at Medtronic was in spine.
That's right, you're in spine. Yes,
I did spine for a year as well. And the only reason I bring that up is because the leap from peripheral vascular to spine, I thought that was big. The leap from spine into neuromodulation and pelvic health was even bigger, right? And it wasn't because one of the things was more difficult to understand than the other. It was, in peripheral vascular and in spine, the market for any given product is pretty much defined, right? Who needs what is pretty well defined. Now it's just about me convincing a customer that my widget is more appropriate for this defined disease or issue than the competitive widget. When you go into, or I went into pelvic health, where there was no competition, it was a much different scenario that was more difficult because there's 3 things that were present in the pelvic health world that were not in spine and in peripheral vascular. Number one, the market was not clearly defined, right? So not only did I have to, convince this doctor of the capabilities of said product, it was, okay, who do I use it for and when do I use it? That's a much different conversation when you're talking about a market that's undeveloped. So you get some market development experience in pelvic health that you really don't get in a lot of places, right? So that's number one. Number two, this was the one that was really hard to um, wrap your arms around how to be efficient and effective in, and that's the patient interaction,
Yeah.
right? In spine, patients face down, filleted open from the back before you get in the room. Hey, doc, this is how you put the pedicle screw in, yada, yada, yada. We're good to go. Same thing, peripheral vascular. Patient's not asleep, but, it's not a situation where I have to, coach and or interact with the patient for any given reason.
Right.
The patient rep interaction was wow. Now, okay, so this is analogous to training camp, right? This is like football training. That was the biggest moment of understanding that this is a whole different ball game, right? That was the biggest leap that I had made in my corporate America career from one job to the other. Creating a market, interacting with patients, and then the third and final thing was the amount of administrative follow-up necessary in the pelvic health world, right? That's where I learned to be a lot more detailed and organized in terms of keeping track. Because, not to bore people with too many details, but in the pelvic health world, it's not just about talking to the doctor about your product and getting him or her to say yes, getting the patient to surgery and performing the procedure correctly. Then the real work happens thereafter, right?
Yeah.
How is the patient performing with the product long term, right? And that's where we came in as well. And so I had to be a lot more organized and detailed in my notes and understanding, where the patient was, where they are now, and what the expectation is moving forward. And it prepared me quite a bit for that next step into leadership because of those three things and being able to have the openness to learn those things, and then number two, the wherewithal to execute on those things effectively. That was not easy at all, Jordan. And you know this, you live that life, man. Pelvic health is a different world.
Never as a rep, but certainly with you guys in the field, I got out as much as I could. And to see it, to go on field rides, it was always a blast, and you learn so much that way. I was talking to a senior vice president of sales the other day who is a client of mine. And as we, finalize things with the contract and all that, he told me, we will hire people who don't have neuromodulation experience, but we have to understand the empathetic component in their life. And I said, well, tell me more about that. And he said, I need to see something from these finalists that shows that they understand working with individuals in difficult life circumstances. He goes, it could be through volunteerism, it could be through their synagogue or their temple or their mosque or something where, they have interacted with people where life's not going well. He goes, and they don't have to have neuromod. He said, but they have to have this component to themselves, where they're doing something for people that can't do anything for them. And I thought that was wise. I thought that was a really interesting statement, because I think that's the underrated part that success, in my experience, hinges on in neuromod sales is the patient interaction, because there's so much of it.
Yeah. If you, for me, it was, and I coach my team the same way, understand the person behind the product first. Right. Because, obviously we have a job to do and we have quotas to meet and things of that sort, which always made public health sort of a weird place to be. But, we could talk about that another time. But and I think one of the reasons I was successful as an individual contributor and and my team was successful is because they would hear me say this repeatedly about them as a team. Number one, the name on the back of the jersey for me means much more than the name on the front of the jersey. Right. And I governed myself accordingly with them. Now, that didn't abdicate them of the responsibility of completing what needs to be completed in terms of the tasks related to the position, but it helped them understand that I want to engage the whole person, not just the professional. And I asked them to look at the patients that they come into contact with the same way. Engage the whole person, not just the fact that this is a means to an end for another implant.
Yeah.
And Neuromod is a really special place because you get a chance to do that. On a high level. I mean, I never imagined in my corporate walk that I would be the recipient of marriage proposals and cakes and hugs and and just tears of sadness and then tears of joy and be invited to, Christmas dinners and
Yep.
have Christmas cards from patients who, I mean, it's a level of, enjoyment and satisfaction and fulfillment that I didn't even know existed. So, Neuromod will always hold a special place in my heart because it helped me understand the connection between the devices that we sell and the
Mhm.
people who get a chance to benefit from them. You don't understand it any better than you can in a neuromod role like the one we had at Public Health.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you got into InterStim sales and absolutely tore it up, just obliterated that number, took it on as a personal mission and just destroyed it. And then did the hardest thing in the world to do in medical devices. You got promoted to sales management. Though there's so few spots and so many people that want those spots. And there are people that spend decades wanting that spot and not getting that spot despite performing. And you got it. How difficult was it to get? And what advice do you have for people out there that haven't broken through yet, but really want to?
Yeah. The first question is, how difficult was it to get? It was extremely difficult. The first time I put my hat in the ring for it, I was denied. I was told, no, no, sir, not a chance. Just like, the NFL situation.
Yeah.
But again, just like the NFL situation, I'm going to prove them wrong. So I spent the next 2 years doing a lot more than just performing in my current role and trying to have, and again, this is just Joey one-on-one, but having to understand the difference between influence and impact as I define them, right? So my impact can be measured by the number behind my name as it pertains to whatever performance metric is set in front of me, AOP or, implant growth or testing growth, that kind of thing. So that's my impact. What I needed to learn how to do is have more influence, right? And that is helping coach my peer group or somebody else or, somebody who's coming along to be able to have the kind of success that I had in developing those examples along the way. So understanding the difference between influence and impact and then how to fill the influence bucket as much as I had filled the impact bucket is part of what made me a much better candidate the second time around than the first time around. And then
What did you specifically do to show that influence component? Because literally that could be the soundbite when we advertise this podcast is influence versus impact. Because I think that crystallizes it really, really well. I always use professional sports analogies and say, Michael Jordan to me is the greatest player of all time. I also think he would be the worst coach of all time if he were to get that job. I love you, MJ, but I mean, I think if you hear this, but I just think he'd be terrible at it because his impact was unreal, and to try to turn that into influence on a team is a very different situation. So how did you do that? How did you make people aware? How did you grow in your influence ability?
Great question. So the first thing I did, and I got this advice as well. So obviously your manager is an employee as well, and they take time off. So the first step I took was, hey, the next time you're out of office, can I be the point of contact for the district? What kinds of things can I do while you're away to ensure things are running smoothly in an appropriate fashion, right? I can't be privy to everything because it is what it is. It's not my role, but my pay grade. But if, can I listen in on the leadership calls when appropriate? Can I be the team liaison while you're away? And that advice that I was given was phenomenal, right? Because it's not just you raising your hand, say, I want to be a part. It's you raising your hand, say, I want to be a part and I want to learn, right? Not that I'm appropriately prepared right now, but I want to learn what I don't know. So that was the first thing. The second thing is then taking those opportunities when something did arise and being able to show up for the team as a resource, right? It's one of those things, first you try, then you trust. Right. And so invariably, you do that a couple of times. Something does happen while the manager is out and you get a chance to show up as a valued resource. And then from there, having a couple of those examples, the second thing I did was move into an opportunity where as a field sales trainer, I could, absolutely be able to show, hey, this person was onboarded and coached by myself and maybe one other person in my peer group. And they've gone on to win President's Club. And they've gone on to hit their number the first two consecutive years they were around. Those kinds of things help build the portfolio. So number one was stepping in for your manager when he or she is out for any given time. Number two, leveraging the fact that you're a field sales trainer, or if you're not, becoming a field sales trainer, and then not just doing the role, but making sure that you chronicle the steps along the way that you took in order to onboard this person, and then watching their success and knowing that you were a part of that and being able to recant that when the time is given. then the time is appropriate. Sorry. Then the third thing that I did was, and this was, I just got lucky with this one because I had a friend who was who worked in house, and that was getting on a project that was outside of just field sales, right? So what I mean by that is the folks in marketing are always working on something. The folks in finance are always working on something. The folks in R&D always working on something, and that something is supposed to help us be more effective in our role outside in the field.
Right.
It would stand to reason that there would be input from the people who will be the end users of whatever initiative you're working on or whatever project you're working on. It would be, it makes sense that you would get some of their input. And so I had a friend who worked in-house who was able to plug me in with a couple of these projects and be able to show how my thought process could help produce more efficient and effective outcomes for others. So I got attached to building a sales model when I was still in the field. That we used and coached to for the entire time that Ben Ozen was still the regional director there. There are a few other projects like that. So 3 things. Number 1, show up for your manager when he or she is out of town. Number 2, use the fact that you're a field sales trainer to engage the new hires and be a part of field sales training when they go into the home office as best you can to show your ability to not just do what you do in the field, but coach to your positive results. And then number 3, attach yourself to someone in-house that can help you get in on one of these projects or tiger teams so your voice can be heard by some of the in-house folks. It's a really easy playbook. Not everybody has it, but it's stuff that you can execute on. Again, in the event that you understand that impact is first, that's how you build influence thereafter. After the impact or the execution of your role and responsibilities, how you build influence is, how I built influence is through those first 3 steps that I just detailed to you. Does that make sense?
That's great. Great advice. Absolutely great advice. Why did you want to be a leader? Why was that the right move? Most time, terrific individual contributors make more money than their manager in a lot of situations. So it's not always financial reasons to go into that role. What was it for you? Why did you want to step into leadership?
So to speak to your last point, I took a pay cut because of the success I was having in the field to go into leadership. Yeah. But following the roadmap that I just detailed, man, it filled my bucket immensely to be able to meet someone at point A and then be a part of their journey to point B in their development, right? I didn't know how much I would enjoy that until I started to do it. And that was the best part of being a leader for me, the professional development. Not to suggest that I have all the answers, but I do know, just like you asked me before, when did you know you were kind of special as an athlete? I knew I was different and I would be different as a leader when I would hear some of my peer groups, some of the rhetoric they use to describe their team. And I'm not going to say any names, but just to kind of bring it home in terms of what I mean. When we're having conversations about the people on our team, I would hear the expression, well, he or she is just a bad rep. And it would be like somebody taking their fingernails and running them down the chalkboard when I heard it, because it puts all the onus on that person in terms of their inability to complete the task necessary, to be successful in their role. Where do you take responsibility as a leader for their performance as well?
Good question. Yeah.
And so those little things, those little signals let me know that I was a little bit different in how I saw things and how I saw this leadership role. And I thought I had something to give because of that. And that was kind of but that was the inspiration for me going into leadership. It wasn't financial. It was number 1, professional development. And number 2, looking at leadership, not as a means to an end for the leader, but really taking a look at it through the lens of a servant leader. It was kind of cool, Jordan. I know we're running up against time, but I hit 15 straight quarters.
Yeah.
As a leader.
I have that in my notes.
Which one of the things I'm really proud of to this day, and it's not the fact that I hit 15 straight quarters. I remember very distinctly the last 2 quarters of that 15 quarter streak, based upon building a healthy business. We probably should not have hit those quarters, and I wasn't going to engage my team around keeping the streak alive for myself. I wanted to make sure that we set our business up for long-term success. But because my team. They bought into how I saw things. I had 2 of the peer leaders tell me, we're not going to let you miss. We're going to keep this streak alive. And for me, when I say that's one of the things I'm most proud of in terms of that 15 quarter streak, it's not the fact that, hey, I hit more consecutive quarters than anybody else. It was, I had felt like I'd done my role or completed my my job effectively because the people on my team felt compelled to put their own needs aside to help us win collectively.
Yeah.
And it was one of the things that I miss most about being in people leadership, being able to connect with the team to the degree that
Yeah.
I have mine. That's great. We want to make sure we get ours.
Yeah.
And so it was
That's
probably the
fantastic.
most fulfilling in my career. Point in my career is when I was a people leader.
And every salesperson listening to this knows what a personal sacrifice that was for them to do that for you. So you built just really good esprit de corps with them because, they've got, after they do all that, they've got another quarter now and they're going to be having to move some product off the shelf fast,
Exactly.
That's great. And I can see why you built that. Now you, like you said, 15 straight quarters, you're above AOP, you're killing it across all these metrics. But there was an opportunity to make a move in director of strategic accounts. Why was that a good move for you at the time? I mean, you could rest on your laurels a little bit in that business. You're one of the elder statesmen at that point. You'd seen a growth trajectory that was just off the chart. Why make a move into another complete business unit and do a different role?
The need for a challenge, right? That competitor that was still in there from way back when I was playing sports. He's still there now. He doesn't have the knees or the ankles or the shoulders of the kid who was playing football. But thank goodness, as we talked about before, there's no training camp in the corporate world. But I wanted to challenge myself. So it wasn't a situation where I said, okay, I woke up one day and said I wanted to be a director of enterprise accounts or strat accounts. It was, okay, let's take a look at where you think you have, some value and where you'd like to grow as a professional. When I looked at those two things, a role like the one that I was just in seemed to be a role that would allow me to do two things. Number one, leverage some of the skills that I was able to build as a leader in that small division. And number two, give me the opportunity to grow into some of the other skills or flex some of the other muscles that would be necessary for me not to do well in just that next job, but the job beyond that one, right? And so the first thing I did was decide to engage a couple of my mentors around, okay, so what gaps, let's talk a little bit about my career, what I've done. What gaps do you see that I need to fill? And one of them was having a better understanding of finance, right? P&L, understanding exactly how these requests that bubble up from the field, how they're assessed, and the metrics that are used to be able to kind of ascertain whether or not it's going to be doable. So I heard that. From his vantage point, he was just saying, hey, maybe spend some time with the folks in finance to understand their decision making. What I heard was go get a master's in finance. So I got a master's in finance from my alma mater, IU. I'm very proud of that experience. It was harder than any training camp I've been a part of. But again, I took the advice of my mentor. I maybe took it a little too far, but I used that as a guidepost there to make sure that when I did present myself for one of these roles, what was an area of opportunity is now an area of strength. And so not only can I speak the language, the requisite language to be successful in the role, but I've also shown you that given proper coaching and guidance, there's nothing that I won't do to ensure that I'm successful in a role, right? So there's two things that can be gleaned from that experience for the person sitting on the other side of the table. So number one, the reason I wanted to do it, and I took that, I left what was comfortable is because I didn't want the challenge. I wanted to grow. And I also realized that I didn't want to necessarily be a district sales manager for the remainder of my career. And so I had to take some steps to prepare myself for not only this next role, but the role beyond that, and the one that I retire from. And so that's why I, got myself out of my comfort zone and challenged myself a little bit and stepped into the role that I just left.
And you went into that role and just, again, started hitting the cover right off the ball. What did you learn in that role? Because there's people out here, managers that have not gone into a director of strategic accounts. They may have worked with those people, but they may not know exactly what's behind the curtain in a job like that. What do you do in that job? What are the tasks, activities, kind of strategies? What's that look like?
Yeah, at a high level, the biggest tool I have in my bag to help the field is, contracts, right? Creating and writing contracts that are mutually beneficial for both, obviously, the end customer and for us, right? That are beholden to our pricing disciplines and, some of the structure that we want to put in some of these deals. But using that tool that I have in my bag to create opportunities for the field to go and win, right?
Yeah.
So the way that the role that I had worked was I had 6 categories of trade, or six different product categories,
Hmm.
from vessel sealing to stapling to wound closure, which is suture, hernia, gynecology. So looking at this chessboard, having access to those 6 different
Yeah.
categories and trying to figure out, okay, in any given IDN, we have a strong presence in vessel sealing, but we have zero presence in stapling. How do we leverage what we have in vessel sealing to increase our footprint or expand our footprint in stapling? So it was
Hmm.
an opportunity to play chess at a much higher level.
Yeah.
Again, not speaking disparagingly of any DM role, but it's just,
Right.
again,
Hmm.
looking this thing from a more macro vantage point
Yeah.
and using what we have here in terms of positive position to improve the position of one of these other categories of trade, which is
Hmm.
one of the things I loved about the job, right? So that was at the 30,000 foot view. And then there was some, contract governance that was a part
Hmm.
of the job,
Sure.
existing contracts. If the customer was not meeting, their portion or, their portion of the agreement, what are we doing to hold them accountable?
Hmm.
What Get Healthy plan are we putting together? And then ultimately, if they're not getting healthy, are we taking the next hard step to, take price and
Sure.
increase their price based upon their lack of uh,
Compliance or whatever.
compliance with the contract, I guess is
Yeah.
the best way to say it. You're
Hmm.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the day to day of the role,
Yeah.
and man, I enjoyed it immensely. What I
Yeah.
learned is, and this is for anybody listening looking to take a leap into a role where, it may not be a direct line in terms of
Hmm.
level of promotion or how any given um, org chart looks. Is one of the reasons I was told that I earned the role is because I was very adamant about and very descriptive of my ability to not only execute on a given playbook, but be a part of authoring a playbook,
Yeah.
right? Because the role that I took was brand new. There was no footprint for it. There was no playbook. There was no template. We had to chart our own path. And
Hmm.
during the interview process, I gave example after example of me not only being able to execute on a said playbook, but being a part of recognizing an opportunity for us to get better and grow in a certain area, and then putting together some I guess if you will, playbook or metrics or just some guideposts around how not only I can become successful in that role, but somebody coming behind me can follow that same path towards success that I did.
Hmm.
And it was a situation where I didn't know how prophetic
Yeah.
I was being at the time in terms of what was going to
Yeah.
be necessary to do this role well, because I was given a list of 16 IDNs.
Yeah.
Their, last year's production and what's expected this year, and I was told to have at it. And
Hmm.
so from day one, you had to
Perfect.
develop a playbook. So I guess the next lesson in that was never lie during your interview,
Uh,
because
yeah.
if you're not good at something you say you're good at, you'll get exposed pretty quickly. But
Yeah. Yeah.
again, based upon what you shared, my finish at 103% to plan,
Yeah.
I think it does substantiate any claim I did
Hmm.
make around being able to develop a playbook for
You
success,
did it.
even when.
Yeah. I mean, overplaying performance in your first year, and um, you're obviously a free agent again. So tell me about that. Wrapping it up at Medtronic, and sort of what's next for you. What are you interested in doing next?
Yeah, the end at Medtronic wasn't how I saw it ending,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
again, it's life, man. Life happens when life wants to happen. But the crazy thing is, Jordan, there was maybe 30 minutes or maybe an hour of like, why me and frustration.
Yeah.
And then you figure out, why not you, idiot? I mean, what makes you exempt from dealing with something like this when everybody else
Mhm.
they've exposed themselves to the possibility of this reality as well. So you're no different. So what are you
Mhm.
going to do now? And I hate to say this because it may come off the wrong way, but in a way, it's been really liberating, man. It has really helped me pull back the blinders and see, the opportunity out there for somebody who looks at the world both personally and professionally the way that I do. And the response from some of the people that I consider to be mentors and other folks in my network has been overwhelming. Um,
Mhm.
and so I do have a few opportunities I'm considering at the moment. Um, and both of them, or they fall into one or two categories, going back into people leadership, but not this time having direct reports that are individual contributors, but direct reports who are leaders of people themselves. So
Nice.
there's a couple of opportunities in that regard, and then there's some other corporate accounts type opportunities
Mhm.
as well. Um, if you had to ask me which one, I was leaning towards in terms of the style of, or sorry, the role, that would be best suited for me in this next chapter. I don't know specifically just yet because, as you know, a lot of, and again, it's just again the recurring theme here in this conversation. A lot of what's going to determine which role is right is going to be fit, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
The fit with whoever I would be reporting to, the fit organizationally,
Yeah.
the fit amongst the peer group on whatever team I'm going to be a part of, right? That's going to dictate which role is best for me moving forward, as much as what are the day-to-day roles and responsibilities. Because if nothing else, I think you've heard I really enjoyed leading people,
Yeah.
um,
Oh yeah.
and I have 8 or 9 years of experience doing that. But I also have really enjoyed this corporate accounts
Mm.
role and being able to play chess at a different level to create opportunities for the field team, right?
Hmm. Yep.
And not to suggest that I saw the leadership thing through and I feel like I mastered leadership, not by any stretch of the imagination. But in terms of runway for growth, continued understanding and opportunity, a
Hmm.
corporate accounts type role would definitely be one that I would um, lean towards because
Yeah.
there's so much more that I still need to learn and I wanted to learn and I wanted to
Hmm.
become proficient at that again, given the short period of time in one fiscal year, that
Yeah.
you just can't do in 1 year. So, but I am
Organization.
excited about the next chapter, man.
Yeah, that's great. And just to maybe put a pin on it, it was an organizational contraction, right? It was when it was reduction, wasn't just you, it was other individuals. I mean, clearly you were performing. I mean, it's unfortunate when that happens because that's completely out of your control. You controlled everything you could.
Yeah, there was not a bad review. There was no coaching conversation. Things were going along swimmingly. But if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 3 consecutive years
Hmm.
of high single digits. Maybe one of those was a double-digit year of decline in performance. And the role that I took was a brand new role,
Hmm.
and there was no human capital attached to the role, right? And when you look at something like that, even though the performance was there,
Yeah,
it's a situation where if we need to get lean, this is a good place to get lean.
this would be the area.
And
Yeah.
do I regret my decision to take that role? Absolutely not. Not for a moment. No,
Hmm.
I don't, because it wouldn't have opened up what's been opened up to me in terms of this next level of opportunity. Right? I have corporate accounts experience now. I have relationships and IDNs I can leverage moving forward that will follow me, not
Right.
Medtronic necessarily. I have exposure now to dealing with large capital, which I never would have gotten in public health. Right? It was all disposable experience.
Yeah.
So it just opens up what I can do for this next phase of my career, and for that I'm eternally grateful.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, there's no hard feelings.
Yeah.
I could have said that a few weeks ago for that first 30 minutes, but there's no hard feelings. It just, I mean, it happens. It's business.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited about your future, Joey. I'm going to be watching and seeing where you land, and then probably hitting you up, seeing if you need any reps, or anybody like that. Thank you for being on. I'd love to have you back, man. This is just fantastic information. Very helpful. Very helpful.
And thank you for thinking enough of me to have me on here, Jordan. You, like you said, man, we've known each other back when neither one of us had hair. I don't know if
Yeah,
you remember, but you used to wear the bald cut and
I have ball fade. Yeah, nonstop. Yeah.
yeah. And so we've known each other for a long time. And
Yeah.
for anyone listening, if you get the opportunity to engage Jordan professionally, no matter how small or big the opportunity, you just there's not enough that can be said about somebody who picks up the phone, who answers the phone. The guy always answers, whether he's worked with you, 20 years ago or he's trying to actively place you right now. You always pick up the phone, and that speaks to your character and your commitment to not just the product, but the people that you deal with, man. So kudos to you. Your success makes all the sense in the world based upon how you've approached things, man. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the friend that you've been over the years, man. Thanks a lot for having me.
Absolutely, man. I'll see you in Vegas at NSN this year. So
Look forward to it.